Hello, thanks for inviting us to present Raising the Bar on High Needs Specialized Education for the A4LE's Association Days. It's fun to try this medium out for the first time and do what everybody else is doing and present a project that's really near and dear to our hearts also for a very special young adult student population with the Omaha Public School District. We'll start with introductions.
Hello, I'm Shauna Ferdima, and I am the director of the Omaha Public Schools Transition and Work-Based Learning Programs. And I've been an educator in special education with the Omaha Public School District for the past 28 years, but the last 6 of them as the director of the transition program.
Hello, my name is Megan Lamprecht, and I'm an interior designer with BVH Architecture. I was super excited to work on this project. I have a passion for designing with the health and well-being of building occupants in mind. So as we get through this presentation, you will see how that applied and how we were able to use some data and science in this building, which is super exciting.
I'm Cleve Reeves. I'm a principal architect with BVH Architecture. I've been focusing on education spaces for most of my 20+ year career. And this is another one of those that, like I said earlier, was near and dear to our hearts because we all have someone either in our family or a close family friend that fits in this segment. And it's great to be able to do something that uplifts this special group of students.
Hi, my name is Haley Obiglin. I am the Talent and Culture Manager for BVH Architecture, and my role for this project was Engagement Specialist. And I spend a lot of time with students and community in creating events and different learning opportunities for individuals that we work with.
And I am Tim Frisch. I'm a graphic designer with BVH. I also specialize in environmental graphics, and so we'll be sharing some of what we did there too.
So just to give you an overview of what we'll be covering today, we'd like to give you an understanding of what the transition program is and how it works. We'd like to review the planning process. We want to go through and describe the outcomes for you, and then do a special highlight on the student engagement process that we had through the project.
Okay, so to give you a little bit of an overview of our transition program, transition in the Omaha Public Schools are for students that are ages 18 to 21. And we have approximately 165 students in our program. Many districts might call this their young adult program, but in Omaha Public Schools, we do call it transition. So they've completed the requirements to earn their high school diploma. The diploma then is held by the state, and so then the students are eligible to continue to work on any unmet transition needs in the area of vocational, daily living skills, social skills, and functional academics, such as functional reading and math, so a lot of money skills, working on telling time, and of course those reading skills, and those reading skills could just be reading out in the community, such as community signs, navigating the buses to get them to maybe a job or a day service program. But the focus during the transition is life skills. And so those life skills are, how do you measure something in a kitchen? How do you turn on a microwave? How do you do your laundry? How are you going to get yourself up in the morning to get ready to go to work? And of course, just those basic social skills. How do you provide some recreation activities for yourself besides just sitting at home, maybe doing video games, things like that? We really want those students to become engaged, and becoming an adult is learning how to get out there and engage yourself. But we also work on those behavioral skills and working with community agencies to make connections for families and for students once they reach that age of 21 and all of their services within the Omaha Public Schools ends, and they're looking for ways to connect, to find future job skills and opportunities, along with any day service programs to continue with maybe some art and or simple vocational outings that they can earn some at least minimum wage jobs. That is our goal, and how to teach those skills, getting those students ready for that age 21 and life after. So in OPS, as we do in every area of special education, our numbers seem to be increasing. And our services through the age of 21 have increased even more as those special education students, that special education student population is growing throughout the year. So for OPS, we really had to look at our transition program, and we needed to figure out a way to get that put on our bond. And so through the bond, we were then able to secure a rental space. We were able to use dollars towards meaningful building structures versus what we were housed in before. And we were sharing space with the Paralyzed Veterans of America building in Omaha. And our program had stretched out that we were actually using space in some elementary schools, in our district offices. They had some space for us to use there. And so finally being on the bond and having dollars directed towards a location and a space that was meaningful to provide that functional life skills curriculum for our students. And so on the next slide, we're going to watch a video that is going to show you how we kind of advocated for ourselves to then get our taxpayers to go out there and say, yes, we do want to help the transition program. Hi, I'm Shauna Ferdima, and I am the supervisor of the transition program here in OPS. Today we are at the PVA building. That is our location on 76th and Maple, where we have students 18 to 21 with various levels of mental disabilities and physical disabilities that participate in transition activities. Today we're going to start off in our conference room slash teacher leader workroom slash sensory room. This is a small room that we have when we hold any IEP meetings, when we need to calm a student down, and when I'm in the building and or the teacher leader is in the building to do any work. This is a facility that OPS rents, and so we are here during the weekday hours, the school hours only, and then we do have general public that comes in and rents the facilities in the evenings. We have 3 total classrooms in this building, and we serve a total of 80 students. We are not allowed to do any painting to the room, and so it is rather crowded with some of our equipment that we have to bring in from the gym for security. We have lots of adaptive equipment such as standers, walkers that we need to use for our students. So each morning we have students that take things out of the classroom and put them either in the cafeteria space or the gym space, and then each afternoon we then have to bring everything back into the classrooms. This is a community building, so it is open during the day, but we do have a full-time security officer. The next room is actually our teacher workspace. We use this space for if a teacher does need to take a break and have a planned time, they can utilize this desk. And we also allow students to come in and work on an administrative task. So we have little desks that can pull out. As you can see, the space is very cramped. We do have the copy machine, a laminator, but ultimately it is a very small space. As we walk down the hallway, you'll see that we have a storage room over here that we share with the Paralyzed Veterans of America. And so we have one set of shelves, and the Paralyzed Veterans use the other shelves. We'll take you right into our community kitchen area. Breakfast and lunch are brought in from elementary schools, and our teachers and paraprofessionals do serve. This is the room that they serve out of. And then we have a general common space that we have to use in the mornings for breakfast, at noon for lunch, for dismissal at the end of the day, and we do have to utilize the space for teaching. This is the back half of our cafeteria area, and as you can see, we do have equipment, our games and things that we pull in on a cart. But as far as technology, we have a movable smart board that we take in and out each day so that the staff would have access to using technology. But again, everything has to be very portable. Nothing can be secured into either the ceiling and or the wall. We have students that have a lot of physical needs, and they have needs for toileting assistance. So in these bathrooms, we have equipment stored. They are handicap accessible, but again, this is open during the day to any paralyzed veteran that might be using the building. Our equipment we store in a back room. As you can see, we have to put everything on racks that are movable so that we can move them back into the classroom so that they are secured in the evening. Any other equipment that the district purchases is stored behind shower curtains. One of the concerns we have is that all of the equipment cannot be moved into classrooms in the evening, and so it is vulnerable for anything that might occur in the evening or weekends. We need to access changing tables that are adjustable because we have a variety of student needs, and so our changing space is very large. As you can see, this area is not an area for any type of privacy for a student that does need to be assisted in changing or catheterization. Okay, one of our other classrooms we have is for some of our students that have higher sensory needs. So our sensory area is not very large, but we bring equipment in, such as beanbags. Anything else that might calm the students, it would be used in this classroom area. As we walk down the hallway, now we are in a very much a shared space with the Paralyzed Veterans of America. They have a conference room and they also have their office. But then we bypass all of this and we walk into our final classroom. And our actual daily living apartment area is back here in this kitchen. In the kitchen area, we do have to store the cooler for the students' milk for breakfast and lunch. And this is the cooking area that we have. And so when you think of 80 students rotating in to do cooking activities, it is a rather cramped space. As we work on hygiene and things, this is our bathroom that we use. So we cram as much into every space that we possibly can. As you can see, we're working on some hygiene now. We do have a shower in here and drawers and cupboards. Our last little space we use as storage for any of our CUNY files, and that space then is also a space shared by staff for offices. And so this might be a room that could be used to practice daily living, but we needed a space for staff to have office and a secure location for our CUNY files within a locking door. So that brings us to on our full tour of the transition program at the PVA location.
We love OPS! We love OPS! We love OPS!
Well, as you can see, it doesn't matter where we're located. Our students are very proud of our program. They love the district that they attend. There's smiles on their faces. But as far as an environment that we can stretch and grow, that was a very difficult environment to do that in. Just the daily living area alone was overwhelming, and providing staff an area that they felt that they could step away from students and plan was very important. And that was part of what we wanted our community members to see, was how we were needing to have a space that was going to be unique. And we couldn't do that just by moving here and there into other buildings.
So just to give a little bit of an overview of the planning process, I'm sure no one who's watching this session has been through a fast track project, but we had to get this design phase done in 2.5 months. As I recall, we needed to be done by February 1 so that we could spend the rest of that year through August implementing the construction. So pretty quick timeline on a space that the district had just secured the lease on within the last few weeks prior to the team starting. We did have a design advisory group or an EdSpec committee, depending on which flavor your district might use. In this case, it involved 3 different parents, 3 teachers, Shauna, the program director, and obviously the Omaha Public Schools facilities staff along the way as well. This was a completely distinct project to Omaha Public Schools. So not only did we have a fast timeline, but we had to help the district to rethink all of their design guidelines and standards for this project. Since they were in a lease space, that changed the rules on a number of fronts. But also just this unique young adult population had different requirements than, say, elementary or even high school students did. So it was a fun process. And of course, there were plenty of challenges, as most projects usually have. It was fun to go back and review my notes from our first kickoff meeting on this. Set the bar high was underlined, bolded, and had a few exclamation points on it on several pages of my notes. The sentiment from everyone in the project, from the students, the parents, the design team, the teachers and OPS facilities, was all that these students deserve better. We wanted to create a conducive environment for this unique population. The district had no qualms that the existing environment worked, but it wasn't as conducive as it could have been. Things like space, as you can see from the video, were pinched at almost every turn. The flow worked, but not really well. Acoustics, which is heightened in terms of needs for this young adult student population, became even more important. So things like the HVAC system and others were more finely tuned than what we would normally do, even for a proper teaching and learning environment within a K-12 classroom. Technology, both the traditional teaching technology, but also the technology that these students needed, was scrutinized at a higher level. And movement and recreation was something that was facilitated at the facility, but being a shared use facility at PVA, they didn't always have as much access as they needed. And getting there was a meandering route down a long circuitous corridor. And of course, accessibility, much heightened standard here. One of the things that was really fun for me through the process is prior to this project, typically we think of specialized education and we think about creating either an environment that's a little bit more like a home setting or more like a school or work setting. And through the engagement with the Design Advisory Committee, I remember that they said, you know what, this facility and this program is really the college campus for these students. So let's make it feel like that. It's fun to have those kinds of pivots in a project and learn as you go. And I think that really helped chart the course for something that, again, helped us to set the bar even higher than what our initial expectations were for this project. To give you a little bit of an overview of the site, we were within a mile of the existing facility, but this site was deemed much more conducive because there was more space for one. It was a lease that the district could hold on their own, but it was also close to a number of employers and program partners that the transition program utilized. So partners like Goodwill, Home Depot, and a number of restaurants were within this suburban mall setting. So it made transportation much easier for the program and the district going forward, and access for those employers and these young adult students going forward to have a better relationship as well. It was a former fabric store, which made it a nice open floor plate for the most part. And it was close to other local high schools and the OPS service center where facilities is housed. This is what the floor plan looked like when we came into the building for the first time to do our assessment of the site. Nice wide open space, plumbing, back of house offices and storage to the left of the plan, and then adjacent tenant space further left. Should also mention that to the right of the plan is an open lot, which gives the program room for growth on this site as well. I'm sure none of you have ever been through a process where you're trying to put more into a building for a program than what the square footage allots. That was absolutely the case in this program, and we had to get creative in terms of multi-use spaces, and even looking at the time of day for the use of spaces to figure out how we could facilitate a both and design solution. The final floor plan looks like this, and Megan will pick it up and go from here, but there's a number of security requirements that were worked into this plan, the flow, and facilitating the education. It's amazing how even in short order, the team was able to pull this together and come up with something that I think sets the model going forward. Megan?
Yeah, so although we only had just over 14,000 square feet, you can see that we did fit a lot of program in the existing floor plate. On the next slide, we break down what those programs are. As Cleve mentioned, we do have existing exterior that we had to work with. So, and we had the security concerns. So we really based everything off of the existing vestibule, which is shown in the gray with the number 1. We really wanted 2 layers of security. So students have to buzz in at the enclosed vestibule, and then they enter into a secured lobby where there's someone staffed to then let them into the facility. All of the building is really centered around the central flex zone, as we call it. So as you walk through the vestibule and entry lobby, you're greeted in this entry flex zone, and all of the program is circulated around it. Everything shown in the light orange, those are classrooms, and then the darker orange are multi-purpose spaces. We have admin spaces that are strategically located to give visibility out into the flex zone. And then all of our back of house services are shown in the light gray. Those were really a given when we were working through design. We wanted to keep all of the plumbing and utilities where they were previously located, just to help with project costs. But the whole intent of this building was to really plan for the unexpected. We know that things change on a daily basis. An example of that might be there's a snow day and your work experience for your students are canceled. So you actually have twice as many students in the building than you regularly do on a normal day. So we wanted to think about how these spaces could work smarter and not harder, and how they could really serve as flex or multi-purpose spaces in the event that you have an influx of students. So you can see that on the next slide, this whole orientation is around this flex zone. The idea is that this flex zone helps with the overspill of students. It also serves as a place for students to decompress if they're having a hard day or a hard time in the classroom. It's also a great place for social and learning those soft skills that we often take for granted. And I think, we went through this process nearly 3 years ago. As we think about flexibility, that has even been pushed further during the pandemic. And Shauna, I'll let you talk about that and how the unexpected happened over this last school year.
Yes, so thank you, Megan. I will say that I was, number one, blown away when you take a building the shape that we were working in, and how the creative team could come up with fitting all of our wants and needs and everything else into that space. The flex zone especially was an area that was students could flow around in. Well, with the pandemic, once special education came back 100% in the building, we really did have to get creative with the different spaces. And so when they designed our cafeteria area, it had to be not just for eating lunch, but we also knew that we would have to provide classroom instruction in there, along with another area, which was the gym or a multi-purpose room. But the flow within the building, having that flex zone, we were able to put directional signage around, and we could keep that social distancing up, along with some of the other things that we're going to talk about here in the next upcoming slides, just keeping the flow of our students who knew that a pandemic was going to hit, and our building was so prepared for it.
So the next slide, we have a diagram of what that flex zone was intended to be from a design standpoint. So it really was the social hub or the lobby of the whole building. You can see that we provided a variety of furniture. The intent is that people could socialize as well as work. We also thought about how this space could be used for informal classrooms. So in the event that you've got a smaller group, maybe 4 to 6 students and an educator, they could come out here and have informal learning, not in a classroom setting. And the dashed lines around this space show the circulation patterns that Shauna was referring to. At the very beginning of this project, we wanted to create spaces that were active. So if there was a student that had a lot of energy and they needed to get some of that energy out, this is a great place to tell them to go take a few laps and get some of that energy before we rejoin the classroom. It's about 90 feet long, so it is a very long and narrow space, and does allow for some of that active areas inherently the way it's planned. You'll also notice in this space that we wanted to think about wayfinding. So there's a long, narrow corridor. How are we guiding students from one room to the next and having it be inherent? So we had some color theory involved in this. You can see that our multi-purpose gymnasium, we use the color yellow through this entry threshold. All of our learning spaces and classroom spaces were denoted with blue. And then our nourishment or our cafeteria was shown in green. We wanted to create this corporate higher education feel, but we also had spaces like the life skills classroom that we wanted to feel more homey and welcoming. So we used wood and implemented some warmth into those spaces. You'll see in a later image, we've actually taken this elevation of a traditional house and had some fun on how we could work with the architecture of that space. So we're going to walk you through the images through the floor plan. You can see on the floor plan here on the bottom right, this is a view looking into the entry lobby, that double layer of security that we talked about. We wanted this to be a very durable space, but welcoming and warm. So we implemented the use of wood and the natural textures of plants and utilizing the OPS transition blue. You can see that we tried to be very considerate for durability and maintenance. We've got walk-off carpet throughout this entire space with really great natural lighting, and thinking about how OPS could really start to display themselves with a blank graphic wall shown there on the back black wall. The next image is the conference room that's adjacent to this space. So when we worked with the program and the EdSpec committee, we learned that there's a lot of conferencing that happens both internally and externally. So there might be a staff meeting in here, or there might be a caretaker or a parent coming here to meet with educators to talk about their students' needs. Knowing that there were some external meetings, we wanted to place this up by the front lobby so visitors wouldn't have to go throughout the entire space and be disruptive to students going through the curriculum during the day. And that's strategically located next to a staff space too. So Shauna can have really easy oversight from her work area to this space and easily meet with people. And one thing with all of these images that you'll see is that we had to do a lot with very little as far as budget goes. We were very strategic, not only following OPS material standards, but doing everything very cost conscious. So this is a very simple room where we have carpet and paint, and that graphic wall, even in this conference room, is just paint. We had to strike some lines and our painter had to tape off and create some graphics for us, but it still adds a nice pop of color and creates that lively environment that we wanted to provide for these young adults. The next slide is the first impression in that flex zone that we talked about. So this is right as you're walking out of the lobby, you enter this flex zone and you're greeted with this bright, colorful custom mural that Tim's going to talk about later in our engagement process. We really wanted to create a space that was reflective of the students, something that they could be proud of, they could relate to, and if they bring their parents or caretakers in, they can be super excited to show them where they are learning and where they meet with their friends on a daily basis. So you can tell that we tried to create it more of a collegiate feel. We have a terrazzo look floor. Those entry thresholds, as you see there in the green in front of us, really add some bright colors in the space. There's a variety of furniture types that are easy to clean. And then we have this 90-foot custom graphic high up above. It's a vinyl wall covering that our graphic artist created after working with students. And he'll talk about this later, but it really is something that's super special to these students and reflective of the program and what they stand for. The next image is showing this flex zone looking all the way from the right side down the 90-foot long corridor. You can see though that the bright colors really stand out. We have those colored entry thresholds. The blue shows the teaching areas. You can see the green further down leading to the cafeteria. That's really great because you can direct a student or a visitor very easily on where they need to go. We also provided some personal space. You can see the black dedicated lockers there on the left. The idea is that everyone had a touchdown and a home space to lock up and secure their items. This prevented a lot of extra things that would inherently be set on the floor and be in the way of circulation paths in the previous building. So this gives them a sense of pride too, having their own space to secure their items. The furniture is very bright and colorful, and there's a really good variety. We also try to implement power. We have to remember these are young adults. They have cell phones. They need to charge up, and having access to power was extremely important. So that's something we implemented with this as well. The next image is the entry into the daily living classroom. So that house node that I mentioned earlier with the warm wood, this is the entry to that. It's just really a threshold that takes you into an environment that feels like home. We really wanted to create a space that they not only learn those skills that we take advantage of, but it feels different than what the rest of the space does. So on the next slide, you can see an image of what that is on the interior. This looks very different than the teaching kitchen that they had at the previous facility. As Shauna mentioned in the video, it was very tight. And if you have 80 students rotating in and out, it needs to be long and open. and not have barriers with coolers and stuff in the way. So we strategically located this on the south facade of the building so we could have the natural light. The budget didn't allow us to add exterior windows elsewhere, so we wanted to create a dining room apartment environment. So we have the dining area, a living space. Behind this image is a restroom where they actually learn those hygiene skills that were mentioned earlier, as well as cleaning skills. And then we have a full-blown residential kitchen shown here. What you're not seeing is the laundry room behind this space. When we worked with Shauna, it was really important that we provide different styles of washers and dryers. So there's 2 different types in there. Because some apartment complexes or homes might have a stack washer and dryer, others might have a typical separated units that are ADA compliant. So we wanted to provide both of those experiences, as well as provide space that students can learn to fold their clothes and hang their clothes and do all of the tasks associated with laundry. This is an image looking into a typical classroom. As we mentioned earlier, these are all multi-purpose. We really focused on durability and flexibility in these spaces. So the room can be easily reconfigured. We've provided power where it's needed. There's lots of natural light that fills this space. And when we worked with the Ed Spec committee, we learned that these needed to be timeless. You can see there's things put up on the wall. Each teacher does customize their space. So the finishes are very neutral, but they're very durable. When we met with Shauna and the Ed Spec committee, we learned that although carpet is great for acoustics, it's not great from a cleanability standpoint. They wanted to easily vacuum and mop to help with accidents that might happen, regardless of the space. So there's very little carpet throughout this entire facility. But these classrooms are really great. I think this is one of the favorite ones from what we've heard from Shauna. It does have a window in it. There are some classrooms without windows, which we addressed with some electrical considerations that we'll get into here in a bit. And this is an image of the sensory room. So as you saw in the video of the previous location, the sensory room was just happening in a general area of the classroom. We wanted to provide a dedicated space that students could decompress in, that was completely private and could be shut off from the rest of the facility. So we really created a blank room that OPS and Shauna could come in and provide those comfort items, as you see with the teddy bears and the mats on the floor. So we added carpet on here for extra comfort. And we thought about the durability of the walls, knowing that you might have a student that's upset coming into this space. We did want to protect the finishes around it. And then we worked with our electrical engineers to provide dimmable RGB lighting. So these are actually color changing lights that you see here to the right. You can have them change colors and flow in and out. You can completely dim the lights down. We also have power up above for implementation of future equipment like the disco balls and the sensory lights in the future. This is an image of the multi-purpose exercise room or gymnasium. The previous location that they were coming from, they did have a full basketball court that was shared with the other tenants. So having an area to exercise, exert that energy was really important, and the basketball hoop was also important. So we were able to get one hoop in there and get the court striping. But the whole goal of this was to provide flexibility. So it can serve as a physical exertion space, but in the event that we do have an influx of students or COVID, for example, and we need to have students more spread out, we can easily bring in tables and chairs to this space and use it as a teaching facility if it needs to be. One thing I'll note on this is, acoustics and comfort were extremely important. We tried to use acoustical panels and sound masking wherever we could and the budget would allow, just to help with the additional noise, knowing that this student population can be a little bit more sensitive to those acoustical disruptions. So there's also things that we did throughout the process that you can't see in the pretty images. When we met with our consultants and our MEP design team, we decided that not only did we want to set the bar high, but we wanted to provide optimum learning conditions. So all of the finishes that we talked about were selected for cleanability and durability. And then electrical and mechanical design was extremely important. As we mentioned, there weren't a ton of exterior windows. And if you've ever been in a classroom without windows all day and gone outside, you can understand how confusing that can be, just understanding what time of day it is. can also disrupt your learning habits and your sleep cycles. So we designed with circadian lighting in mind. So all of the classrooms have color and intensity tuning as well as stimulus tuning. They are set to adjust based on the lighting that's happening outside. And then they have overrides. So if you're working on an activity that's actually more beneficial with a lower color temperature, the teacher can update those automatically in the classrooms. So they can completely control the lighting based on the task at hand. As we mentioned, sound masking was really important. Little disruptions that we often take for granted can be extremely impactful in a learning environment. So we did have sound masking in all of the classrooms, the flex zone, that multi-purpose room, the sensory room, and then the cafeteria, which also serves as a learning space. An MEP design was extremely important. Knowing that this population does tend to get more sick, we had to focus on how can we prevent that in the design process. So there is UV disinfection on all the MEP systems, as well as electronic air cleaners on the main return air ducts. We looked at increasing outdoor air ventilation and then providing dedicated exhaust systems. So that helps cycle and circulate the air quicker, as well as help with smells. So that's in the restrooms, the changing rooms, and the nurse areas. And part of that mechanical design and the electrical design was designing for restrooms. As Cleve mentioned earlier, we want to go above and beyond what is required by ADA. So on the next slide, we have some examples of things that we learned throughout this process working with that EdSpec group. We knew that the current facility did not have bariatric fixtures. A lot of their fixtures were broken and had been replaced. So we wanted to specify fixtures that would withstand abuse. We also wanted to focus on making the staff's lives easier and providing dignity to students who need extra assistance. So in the previous facility, if there was a student who needed extra assistance in the restroom, staff would physically lift them, and it was a lot of physical exertion. So we implemented Hoyer lifts in the restrooms. And we also implemented zero entry showers directly in those restrooms as well. So in the event that there's an accident, they're not having to be wheeled to another location. It's able to be taken care of right on the spot and restoring that sense of dignity, because before they would have to be taken across the facility to another location. As we mentioned earlier, exhaust system was really important as well. There were diapering needs in this facility, so we wanted to eliminate odor associated with that. We also wanted to give some staff some privacy spaces as well. In the previous location, they shared restrooms with the students, and they really didn't get a break. So we were able to implement staff restrooms off of the workroom, and then also dedicating a sick room off of the nurse's room. As we learned with COVID, if you're sick and quarantining from other students is extremely important. This goes for any illness that we learned, you know, the flu, for example. If you have a child that's sick and waiting pickup, previously they would be sitting out in the vestibule or in the hallway around other students. Having a dedicated sick room where they're waiting for pickup, it just helps eliminate the risk of spreading of infection. And I think it's worked out really well with COVID as a result. So all of these things that we did, it's really fun as a designer to have all of these goals that we set and all of these design metrics that we establish and see how a healthy space can result in healthy students. And now that they've been in that space a little bit, we have a little bit more data on that. And Shauna, I'll let you dive into that.
Okay, well, those OPS outcomes, I don't even need to look at the bullet points on the slide. I would just like to say that being a part of a committee that got to sit and put down our wants and needs on a list and then work with an incredible team that said, okay, we're going to make this happen, was just amazing. And how each day our staff walks in and is blown away because it's their space and the students are so excited to walk into their space. But ultimately, we're looking at a healthy space equals healthy students. And that has been incredible. Our space is healthy. We have room to move. Equipment can be put away. We can move around the building. We can share spaces. And so having that healthy space has made for healthy students, and that includes healthy staff. And so that is just absolutely incredible. Knowing that the majority of our students in our transition program are in the same building, that is amazing. And we were able to bring in more students to a location, and I didn't have them spread out across the city or the district. That is incredible. It's a unique program, and so we have those unique challenges. Teachers and students and then our families have been able to engage more in this setting. We were able, prior to the pandemic, have community engagement evenings, and we could bring community members in. Families could come in and learn from those community members. We had a space that was welcoming. We were not guests in the building. This is our building, and we were able to welcome, guests in. Our other thing that I want to touch on is the lower absenteeism than the rest of the OPS during the pandemic. And that was huge. Our building is healthy. It's those clean air systems. Walking into a restroom and helping a student with some restrooming needs, it is amazing that you're able to walk in, it's a clean space, you walk out, it's a clean space. And so knowing that there were buildings that had to shut classrooms down, we are 100% special education students, and we did not shut down our building. We did not shut down a classroom. So that in itself is a true test to the design. Whoever thought we were going to have to test the design so early, but way to go, we passed with flying colors. But this building sets the bar high for our inclusive learning environment. And I welcome anyone to come and visit. I love to brag about our building. So I have other districts that have come in saying, oh, well, what are you doing? What does it look like? How does the flow work to get to those different learning areas? When we talk about the classroom areas, having one color, the turquoise color, having our gym yellow color, being able to walk into that happy, fresh flex zone area. And the students, they understand where to go in that flow. They understand when they do daily living. They're going into something that looks like a house. You don't see that anywhere else. And so we have set the bar incredibly high, and we're very, very proud of that. And again, it's staff and student morale. It's extremely high. The staff feels like they have a place that they can go when they need a break. But yet there's that flow, that openness, and like Megan in designing even that front office area where there's a conference room, my office is open right to that conference room. And so it is where the teachers and the students know that they can come in. It's an inviting space. They've done everything they possibly could to make sure that we had those visuals, those windows that could see to the outside from an office area, our furniture, which can be calming for everyone. Sometimes some of the staff needs to sit in some of that unique furniture just to chill out. But I don't think that those outcomes, we could have hit all of those outcomes without also some of the engagement that we then did with BVH. And so I think I'm going to turn it over to Haley, and Haley's going to talk about some of the incredible things that we got to do with this architectural firm.
Thanks, Shauna. Yeah, so Tim and I led the student engagement with transition program. And I think co-currently why Megan and Cleve and our project team was setting the bar high, we wanted to do the same thing with the students. And, the client here is Shauna, faculty and OPS, but it's also these students. And so really getting to know them and connect with them was super important when we were in this engagement. And so a few things to highlight, just creating something outside of the classroom for these young adults that they don't normally get to experience was what we were going after. So I'll just go through a couple of the projects that we did, some of the big highlights. If you go to the next slide, you'll see we did spend a lot of our time actually in our studio at BVH. We were lucky to have them be able to come and experience our work life, our 40 plus hours a week, and where we spend our time. And through our projects, we wanted to focus on architecture and design, but we also wanted to start moving into a more personal note of activities for these young adults. And this is one of my favorite projects that we do with an assortment of students. It's our client build project. And I think this highlights a few different skill sets when you're working with students, and that's why we enjoy it so much. You'll see that we have a student who is a client. We have another student act like an architect. and then another student act as the builder. So they work in small groups, which, helps with collaboration and teaching to work together. But those 3 steps that we took as designers at BVH, we got to connect them and tell them, hey, we're doing this for you guys, for your school. And someday somebody is going to build this and make this happen. And so getting to give them a little sneak peek of how it works was the goal out of this, but also getting them to take their imagination to the next level and create their own spaces and have somebody draw that out and have someone build it was the experience we were looking for. And so some of the students, we got all kinds of things, houses with hot tubs on them, on the roof, and coffee shops with bowling alleys. Honestly, it was just fun to see what was come up with, and the fact that some students with different abilities could really draw what they were hearing from another student. And then we also had students who could really build with different mediums. And so making sure to use different types of mediums such as Legos, Play-Doh, drawing utensils, that was really important for these students as well. So it created an inclusive project. We did quite a few different projects, but just a couple more to highlight. We went through a t-shirt activity when it came to the graphics that Tim specializes in. And here you can see that there's different mediums being used because not all students, can pick a pen and draw, but they can mold and shape with their hands and their different abilities. And so we really wanted to make sure that each project could reach a student at a different level and then create that creative process with them. So we did a t-shirt activity, and then we also have our VR system, which is becoming really popular in architecture and design, having the model actually built out. And this was really awesome because we actually got to walk the students through their building before they got into it and give them a sneak peek of what their environment will really look like. I really like to highlight the time that we got to spend with the students and get to know them, because the student pictured here, Ryan, he didn't speak very well, and he also had some sight issues. And when we put this VR on him, one, he started talking, and 2, we started to see what he focused on in the building. And there were certain pieces that I know Megan picked out for design purpose for students to focus in on. And he started actually focusing in on those pieces, even the floor and the textures chosen for that, the graphics and the colors on the walls. And so just to see him light up and actually engage, especially with somebody with, I would say, lower disabilities, those are harder to reach a student of that nature. He lit up, and he spent most of his time hogging the VR, but it was really neat to see him engage in this and for us to connect with him in that way. Another activity that we did that started to steer away from the architecture and design perspective, but more of that ownership to the students. Shauna mentioned to us that there was a spring formal coming up, and when you think of a prom, it's just a pretty standard high school activity. And after I got to know some of these students, quite a few of them told me that they didn't go to prom. And the reason being is because proms in high school aren't set up to be for these students necessarily with different mobility needs, sensory disorders. It just wasn't an environment that was inclusive for them. And so a lot of them didn't go. And I guess that really inspired Tim and myself to make this the best prom these guys have ever had. And so through that process, we came up with, knowing the spring formal was kind of like a red carpet Hollywood theme, we would make a red carpet backdrop, and having the students create this for their own prom and talk about what embodies them, what they think of when they think of the transition program, what they would say to their friends, about this college that they go to. And through the activity, you can see the students worked in groups, and it was really great to see them work together, but also we asked them to present their ideas and talk about those. Those are some of those life skills that they don't necessarily always get, but need to practice. And so having them go through that process is development in itself. But you can see Grayson and Tom here, they did have the final winning design for the backdrop. And through talking through it and having the students present their ideas, some of the words that they described as transition program honestly really hit home for Tim and I. They chose these images because they wanted to embody the strength of a lion, the friendship of a lamb, the calmness of flowers, and the love through a heart. And that just shows what kind of students these are and young adults and how much they care for each other and the program that they're in. You know, this is their lifelong friendships that they're making. And this is the place where they learn to live their adult life. So that was really impactful for us. And I truly feel honored to be part of this project with them. If you go to the next slide, you will see the prom in action. So it was really neat. We had some good backlighting there, and Tim actually took this graphic, made it into the banner. Some of the sketches on there are actually the true sketches. Tim did not alter any of the drawing on the actual banner, which I like to highlight because these students have some artistic ability. I honestly could never draw some of the things they did. And so just to see those pieces, the colors depicted come to life was really awesome. And you can see that the students really enjoyed it. The group here, they are the ones who designed it. They pretty much stood in front of it and said, I created this all night. And just seeing that ownership and that sense of belonging was awesome. And the outcome that we were hoping for. Yeah, so I kind of want to gear it up. We touched a little bit earlier about the graphic that it was actually created in the space that Tim worked on. And that was really specific to these students as well, because Tim was creating this graphic as him and I were working with the students. And so every time we got time with those students, we learned something new, different, and very personal to those students. And I'll let him talk about how that incorporated into the design.
Yeah, thanks, Haley. Yeah, you know, this aspect of the project for me was just really a cool opportunity for us to go above and beyond what I think the typical school design would do, and just to create something really special and unique for these students. So I'm just excited to be able to share kind of a quick look at what went into this part of the project and how we were able to use our engagement time with the students to really guide the design of the mural and tailor it to their specific needs. So as Haley said, the design process sort of overlapped perfectly with our engagement activities, so that as we were learning more about the students and getting to know them, we were actually able to take that inspiration directly and just pour it right into this mural. And ultimately, that became the driving concept for the design, to just essentially reflect back to the students all of the positivity and encouragement that we were getting from them. So that's what we wanted to do, to essentially use this mural as a giant message board to speak these encouraging words back over them. So what we ended up doing was just creating a series of these graphic statements that would kind of roll from one to the next as it kind of expands across the space. So what you see here are a few of our early sketches where we started looking at the graphic style and statements. And as we did, there seemed to be these three main ideas that emerged that all the messages were kind of revolving around, and they aligned really well with the goals of the transition program. And those were, first, this goal of building up and belonging to a community. Second, to show one another respect and dignity. And then third, just this idea of abilities within disability. So the way that we ended up organizing all of these graphic statements was to sort of reimagine the old school alphabet primer. You know, A is for apple, B is for ball, but to use that and actually talk about these three really important aspects of the transition program's goals. So what would it look like to rephrase and reiterate these concepts of community and respect and ability, but to do it in a way that's bright and dynamic, the way that these students are. So here you can see how the final mural kind of spans the space through that flex zone. And you can see how each block of the graphic actually aligns with that portion of the programming. So for example, on the left, you have the community-focused statements like A is for also and we go together, aligning with the daily living zone where the students would be collaborating and kind of working together. On the right-hand side, you have training rooms and classrooms and the gymnasium lining up with those encouraging reminders that you can do it, you've got what it takes. And then my favorite, just right in the middle, it's the first thing you see when you come in, this reminder that we all deserve respect. And that was really always our main goal, through the engagement, through the building design process, to show this group of students the respect and the love that they deserved. And I think the final piece really fits perfectly into the space. We use a lot of the colors and from the materials and furniture that Megan and her team used. So it really does feel like it's a part of the space, that it actually belongs there, instead of just something that is kind of stuck up as an afterthought on the wall. So this was a mural that was absolutely designed for these students with their needs in mind. So it's pretty cool. I think what started out as just simply kind of a need to cover up a portion of the wall became this really great opportunity to give back to the students, something that they could own and be proud of, and hopefully continue to speak to future generations of transition students.
Yeah, and as we close this out, we had to kind of push back a little bit. Originally, the administration didn't think that it was appropriate for us to engage with this student group. And we said, well, how could we go over to an elementary school or a high school and get the same design insight or get the same feedback? But what we didn't realize until we went through it is there's no way we would have got the same fulfillment through the process either. And so kudos to the whole team for sticking up for these students. And we're not just proud of the project and the building that is the end result, but like Haley, Tim, and everyone else has said, these lifelong lessons and relationships that have been fostered through the process also. So we've included both Shauna and my contact info here. If anybody has any questions, or it sounds like if anybody would like a tour from Shauna, please feel free to reach out to us. And if we don't know, we'll put you in touch with the right people. Thanks again for the opportunity, and we'll see you hopefully in person at the next conference. Bye.